Hello, everyone. This is Riggs Eckelberry again. We've been shooting things like crazy. Last night, I shot 17 clips in a row, and actually, the cameraman was me. The talent was me. I was all alone, so you know how it goes. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We'll play this little video. Okay, so here we go.
Hi, I'm Riggs Eckelberry, and I co-founded OriginClear almost 13 years ago. And I can tell you this, it's been an amazing journey. We've learned that the water industry is a huge industry. It's $1 trillion by now and growing, but it's slow moving. And if you want to make change happen, as I do, I came up through the internet, you know, the whole .com days, and accustomed to fast growth, and it's been a challenge. It's not the water industry's fault. It's a fact that it's very, very hard to get water projects done. There's permits, there's designs, there's getting everybody to agree. Technology issues are enormous. And of course, there's capital, right? And in fact, capital probably is the biggest problem of all. I think that if capital was not the issue, things would move a lot faster. And so we feel that we have addressed the capital problem, and it was ironically the disruption of this coronavirus that made us go, wait a minute, we have to do something different. We can't just imagine that the water industry is just going to magically start growing by leaps and bounds. It does 3 to 6% per year. Well, that's not enough, right? That doesn't even keep up with population growth. So we were forced by the virus to look at what was going on and to go, okay, how can we really rev things up? And we feel we've done it. It's a project called Investor Water. You can take a look at it. Really fascinating. We also really wanted to make it possible for anybody, nearly anybody in America, to invest easily. $500 minimum. We offer a dividend subject to an offering circular, which you must read, but an easy way to invest that would help us do our job and give you better yield than you can get from the money market or whatever. And so now, what have we got? We've got a company that's really designed for the new economy. That's why we say it's the water company for the new economy. We're fast moving. We have solved, we think, the capital problem. We have an easy way for people to invest. We are able to move the company in a direction that we think it will become a major player. Now, when water companies become major players, they last. The dominant water company in the world was actually started during the reign of Louis XIV in France, hundreds of years ago. So these are durable, and they do good work. But we are the company, we think, that's fast moving, that thinks in terms of internet speed, digital applications and marketplaces, and breaking things down, not these massive municipal projects, but things that a brewery might do, or a housing development. These are ordinary sized water projects. We think that they will grow faster. I often say that in California, we won't see the high-speed bullet train, but we'll see the self-driving car. Why? Because freeways are already there, and it's pretty easy to do. It's hard, but it's not trillions of dollars hard. And so we think a similar thing needs to happen in the water industry, which is to bypass all the big, heavy, billion-dollar, trillion-dollar water projects and actually get into solutions on the ground right where the problem occurs. We call that decentralized water. It's a very important trend, we think. So between decentralized water, investor water, which is how we've figured out how to finance this, and that's an important pilot project we have going, and then this radically new way of giving people a way to make a decent yield with potentially converting to stock if they feel the time is right, they think that we've done our job right and the stock takes off. Your decision. We would never get in the way of that, but at least the option's there. So it's a wonderful, simple, elegant way to invest and do better than what you are able to in the economy today. So I wanted to tell you the link for this particular offering. It's very important. It's www.oc.gold/offering. OC, OriginClear. Water is the new gold, so gold, right? offering. So www.oc.gold//offering. And to find out about it in a more folksy way, because you'll see a lot of a dense small print, which you must read, go to OriginClear.com. At the top there's a big red band. Click on that and you'll read about what we've accomplished, where we're going, what we're doing, what kind of company we are. And if you agree with us that this is a good thing we're doing, please invest. I welcome it, and I would like you to join me every week, Thursday, 5 p.m. Pacific. You find out about on our site, OriginClear.com/CEO, and I give a briefing. One Thursday out of every month, it's a video webinar, first Thursday, and the rest of the time it's audio. But the audio ones are really interesting because I just sort of get, relaxed and don't get into big presentations, so it has its own value. So I'd like you to join me for that too, please. Whatever you do, don't be a stranger. Join our Facebook page. We don't need you to invest, but pass the word, okay? Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you on our site, OriginClear.com.
Okay, well, that was just one of the shows that I shot. Like I said, I did 17 of these last night, of various short, long, about investor water, about the program we call 2 million pools, which is very interesting. So what's going on right now? Well, we're working very, very hard to roll out investor water, and that is this amazing breakthrough that really was accelerated by the absolute need to do something about the current situation in the world and how to get help going for water. Water needs to get cleaner. I'm going to cover some issues relating to that and come back to the investor water model. So it turns out that there's interesting discoveries. First of all, we know that coronaviruses traces have been found in wastewater, and it's as you'd expect. So there is coronavirus in the wastewater, and normally wastewater would clean that up. I'm not saying it wouldn't, but there's some concerns. For example, that as we saw in the SARS epidemic, there was a spread through defective bathroom sewage pipes in buildings. This occurred in Hong Kong during the SARS epidemic, and it is, of course, possible today. There's another issue, which is that glyphosate, which is Roundup has been shown to reduce immune response to COVID. In other words, it actually makes it more difficult for people to survive the COVID. And that, of course, is a concern for all of us. Now, the problem with Roundup or glyphosate is that it's very, very hard to take out of the water. It's minute. You measure it in nanoparts per million. It's hard to find and it's hard to take out. Typically, clean municipal water systems don't take it out in any kind of appreciable way, so it does make it into the water, potable water. Back in 2016, we actually had a breakthrough where we developed what was called advanced oxidation, AOX, and also AOX plus. AOX plus was shown to create huge amounts of what's called the hydroxyl radical, right? That's the OH weird symbol. The OH weird symbol means that it's not stable. It lacks a molecule. Typically, it'll take a C. So it likes to eat up C's or carbons, right? So it'll go through the water and eat up carbons. Well, that's great because you want to get all the contamination. And we actually found by test, we had to go lease a very high-end mass spectrometer that is currently now in the LA Cleantech incubator. And that spectrometer allowed us to actually measure what we were doing. And we showed that we could reduce and potentially eliminate this from the water supply. At the time, we were not able to commercialize it, mainly because at the time we were dealing with technology. And we've since learned that if you want to commercialize something, commercialize a product. That's what we've moved into, and that's why, for example, we have a great product involved with the animal farms. But at the time, we had a limited capability to commercialize these, and but as I say, it was later used in the animal farm product, and also in my brother took it and some of his own technology, and went ahead in 2018 and scaled up in the Permian to disinfect oil wells using this same technology. And it was quite successful. We received a large royalty check at the time for that. The long and the short of it was that, as I was saying, we found successful application in the Permian, disinfecting oil wells, which gets rid of that sulfur, rotten egg smell, which then improves the quality. It basically makes the oil worth more. And so that was another proof point. Of course, every time the oil industry crashes, has a price crash, they stop spending money on things like that. So, we're going through that phase again, but we have proven that this technology works to get rid of the glyphosate, Roundup, the herbicide, and as a result, it will improve people's immune systems. Now, I am considering, and this is not final, but there's been a lot of companies doing wonderful things to repurpose themselves. They'll be, my friend Human Salem, for example, has a company called Argyle House, and they're a U.S. garment manufacturer, one of the few left in America. He's in Los Angeles, and they completely dedicated their production to creating masks, cloth masks. And I see a newsletter from New Orleans where a number, for example, breweries and distilleries are making hand sanitizer, hot sauce companies are bottling it, clothing manufacturers with sewing masks and gowns, 3D printers who've developed prototypes for protective gear, which have been downloaded around the world. So that's the kind of thing that businesses are doing. And we are currently looking at doing our part, which would be to provide a way for anyone using our technology for the virus to do so without any payment of royalties. That's not a final thing, but it's being seriously considered internally. It's with the board now. So we'll be discussing that further, and we hope to be able to help in that respect. Okay, let's continue. I'm going to just talk a little bit about what's going on in the economy, what's some of the things that are happening. And I'm not going to bore you with what you already know, which is that there's vast amounts of money being injected into the economy. Unfortunately, mostly benefiting large corporations and not the small ones, but it ever was so, wasn't it? But one of the results of that, of course, is that the US dollar is really going to be damaged. The US dollar has been taking a beating against other currencies, and there's even talk that it may end up not being used for all transactions. Call me a skeptic on that, because I think it would not happen very easily. Nonetheless, there's that going on. What is for sure is that a huge oversupply of money at a time when it can't be soaked up easily except as subsidies, in other words, it's not being put so much to productive use right now, is a potential inflation generator. On top of it, we know that the crops are rotting in the fields and so forth. So it's not a good situation for trying to hold on to the value of your cash, right? Now, the additional thing is that there's now talk about what's called a debt jubilee. What is a debt jubilee? Well, the Washington Post, in fact, was just writing this on March 21st, and they referred to this. Now, the debt jubilee was a biblical practice that there was basically as far back as the ancient Assyria. It was normal for new rulers to proclaim a debt amnesty upon taking up the new throne. And, for example, interestingly enough, there was a modern debt jubilee. Debt jubilee is basically a forgiveness of all of debts, right? Well, that was done after World War II in Germany. Our own Marshall Plan, our own Allied powers in Germany, when we introduced the new Deutsche Mark, the German currency, replacing the Reichsmark, which was the Hitlerian currency, 90% of government and private debt was wiped out. Germany emerged as an almost debt-free country with low costs of production that jump-started its modern economy. Okay, it can be a good thing to offer a reset. And of course, critics warn of a creditor collapse. But if the US government can finance $4.5 trillion in already in money giveaways, it can absorb the costs of student loans being forgiven and so forth. And of course, for private lenders, only the bad loans need to be wiped out. Really, what would be written off would be, late charges, penalties, bad loans, and so forth. The problem is that a lot of loans are going bad. We're seeing that in real estate, a tremendous amount of people are just not paying their rent because they know full well they're not going to get evicted anytime soon, which does not lead to a great situation for the large real estate investment trusts and so forth. I could go on and on, but the bottom line is that whether or not anybody declares a debt jubilee, and I kind of doubt that's going to happen, just call me doubtful, only because Secretary Mnuchin, Secretary of the Treasury, is a Wall Street guy. And like Larry Summers during the 2008 recession, he is there on behalf of Wall Street. And he, no doubt, would oppose that. But factually, that's what's going to happen. There's going to be a tremendous amount of credit defaults and people going, yeah, what are you going to do about it? What I'm getting at is that being a lender is not a great place to be in this current marketplace. I would say that if you're lending money to a bank or this or that, it's not as secure as it might seem. The good news is that the offering that is doing incredibly well, our Regulation A offering, is not debt. A dividend is simply a company sharing part of its revenues. And I'm being very approximate. I'm not giving a technical definition. But dividends are not debt. They are shares of the company that return income. What I'm saying is that it's a good place to go with the dividend offering that we've made. And again, I refer you to oc.gold/offering for the fine print and oc.gold/offer for the cool videos and all that good stuff that you will enjoy. That is just a comment on what's happening in the world. And I'm going to turn to this amazing Regulation A offering that's been going on now for some time. 10 days now? Seems like it's just been forever, but it really was just Monday before last that this happened. And I'm going to open up Fund America now and just take a snapshot of the latest and let's see what's going on in there. What are the current investments? Well, I'll tell you that this is an amazing thing to see. It's definitely an offering that people like. So screen number 1 is 93,300, and then screen number 2 is 47,000. So we are about $140,000 for an offering that has a minimum of just $500. That is stunning. I really appreciate your support because even though we are paying a 10% dividend, you have to understand that for us, this is not expensive money. For starters, you're our supporters. You're better than any creditor we could have on Wall Street because, well, you care, and that's important. And it's also going to allow us to get rid of a lot of debt that weighs upon the stock. We have debt that converts to stock. And so even though those people to whom we have the debt are people of goodwill, they don't sell a lot of it. Nonetheless, it's there. And so we'll be able to clean out a lot of this stuff. Number 2, we'll be able to have more working capital. Number 3, we'll be able to do some acquisitions with our own capital. And number 4, we can get involved as an investor in Investor Water, which I'll talk about in a second. I'm very pleased with how it's going. There's a lot of work going on in the team. Money is flowing through the system, and it's greatly appreciated. So thank you for that. Devin is available to talk about it at any time. He's at 323-939-6645, extension 116, I believe. Also, Ken Berenger is extension 201. So it's 323-939-6645, 323-939-6645, extension 116 for Devin. And also it's a way to talk to me because he'll three-way me in. And then extension 201 for Ken. Okay. Also, you can email invest@originclear.com, invest@originclear.com, and it goes directly to both Ken and Devin. So let's talk a little bit about Investor Water. I think that's really, really exciting. And we're busy building a website and so forth. remember my video from last week where I basically said, look, we're connecting the investors with the water projects. And by doing so, we're erasing the biggest problem with getting water projects done, which is the money, right? It's the money, stupid. Well, it continues to be that even more now. So even though the central government and municipal projects are doing fine, and the corporate projects, and they appear to be doing great, because I was super paranoid about this. Our president and COO, Tom Marchisello, went in, did a deep dive with the team, and we are continuing to do deals. So looks like corporations and the government are, shall we say, in business. Government employees have not been laid off. In general, large corporations are also leaving people at work. What we have is, on the one hand, a big water business. Those of you who have heard me talk about how bad big water is, in a sense of solving the world's water problems, will laugh, because here I am saying, oh, well, good, big water is great. But it is good on our Texas operation because it allows me to focus on the new stuff, because the existing business is pretty stable. It's what I call a base load, right? It's going to continue to keep Texas in business, and it's going to be a manufacturing resource for Investor Water. Okay, now let's talk about this new thing. What's going to be a problem with capital is not the big central government things. In fact, I believe they'll get a huge amount of funding from the, $4 trillion infrastructure bill that President Trump is pushing for what he calls phase 4 of COVID. Don't give me a quiz about phases 1, 2, or 3, but phase 4 for him is pretty soon. And as always, these trillions, who will they go to? They'll go to the big guys. Come on. We know who's wired in Washington, and a lot of money is being spent to make sure that the outcome favors the people who pay the millions of dollars to the K Street lobbyists. It is what it is. But what about the decentralized projects? What about my friends Steve and Claudia, who have a mobile home park, an MHP, a trailer park in Alabama? And the state EPA won't let them out, or say, well, you can't sell your property without solving this problem. It would cost them $500 to connect to city sewage. The city won't allow it. Can you freaking believe it? So they have to do it themselves, but they don't have the money. And so then it got into this whole, it's like, okay, well, here's how much it's going to cost, $75,000, and here's a solution. It's approved by the state EPA, and the permits are good, and let's go. And it doesn't involve a lot of digging and pipeline construction and so forth. Well, they didn't have the money, so then they go, well, can you help us refi the whole trailer park? I'm like, oh God, no. That's when we realized that we really had to do something, and we were able to come back to them. And before I get to the solution, let me say that this problem is across the boards. A brewery, people are drinking plenty of beer. There's not a problem in this economy with people drinking beer. But as a brewery expands, the city is telling it, sorry, you can't. And in fact, there's a lot of case studies about it, about breweries expanding. There's one in San Francisco. I'm just looking it up right now. It's a fantastic company that's another company in our space called Cambrian. They are helping breweries expand themselves to their own wastewater treatment. The thing about breweries is it's not that hard to clean the water. It's just a lot of water, right? Which tends to overwhelm cities. And it's also nutrient rich, which is also a challenge in terms of capacity. The whole problem that these end users have, that they're now being thrown on their own resources, animal farms have to clean their own manure lagoons and so forth. Well, where's the capital? And that is a problem, right? These people do not see the capital, and that's going to be the crunch. But they'll still have to do it, right? They'll still be stuck. And that is a bigger problem even than, the coronavirus and the water and this and that. It's about literally, taking care of big water problems that are getting in the way of productivity and even survival. That's when we came up with this idea of getting rid of the capital problem. And what we realized was it relies on a technology breakthrough by our own Dan Early, who created modular water systems. So these compact, portable, drive them in, drop them in the ground, plug them in, put them to work. Well, guess what? If it's that portable, then we can just rent them. Keep title to them, because at any time, if the end user does not pay his bills, and I'm being equal gender here, his or her bills, we can come in. It's our property. Even if they're being foreclosed on or whatever, that's ours. Take it away. and it's back in the fleet. It's like owning a Hertz rent-a-car fleet. So now an investor knows that if they help build this thing, and they're not expensive, as I was saying, $75,000, the typical price for that level, and there's other ones, but the general range of investor water deals is around, we think, around $75,000 to $125,000, which an investor can come in and put money in and have an asset that we control. Number two, because it's a rental, the fees are high enough to pay our management fee plus return to the investor, what we think is 17 to 20% annual return for doing nothing. Why? Because we do everything. We get the projects, we do the technology, we have the local people install it, make it work, and we take care of it all, top to bottom. And we take our management fee, which is a fair amount. We're experimenting with the amount, but we know that even after that fee, that investor gets a chunk of money, really good return on his or her investment. As I say, 17 to 20% passively, no work to be done. And we own the asset. So OriginClear owns the asset, and the investor has what's called a UCC 1 form, which is Uniform Commercial Code 1 form, which means they have a call on that asset. They can say, okay, I'll take that asset if for some reason somebody fails to take care of something. So the investor now has the ability to have a piece of equipment. Very, very important. Now, guess what? We ramp this up. It creates a growing asset base. And when we talk about uplisting the company, I was just looking at the requirements for going on to the OTC QX, which, there's the QB is the level that we can be on, merely by paying, I think $10,000. But the QX, which is the highest level of the over-the-counter market, OTC, requires far more than that. In fact, you might as well go on the NASDAQ. It's almost that bad. But they both require tangible assets, right? They require tangible assets. So what we're going to do here is build an asset base that allows us to qualify for these stock exchanges. So that's really good. When are they going to deregulate H2O? This comes from Moses. That's very interesting. The answer is, just like these debt jubilees thing, is not going to happen formally. It's going to happen de facto, meaning that as municipalities are increasingly unable to do the job because infrastructure investment has been missing since 1960, 60 years now, they're able to do less and less. And so private industries had to do more and more. And the power is just moving more and more to the edge, and they're being allowed to do more and more. For example, higher arsenic requirements come in, like you're only allowed to have X amount of arsenic, and those requirements become bigger, meaning that less arsenic is allowed. Well, the city is just passing on the requirement to the users. They can't do anything about it. It's like, hey, you bring the arsenic level down, or else we'll shut you off. Well, that is allowing the people at the edge to kind of have their own agenda, right? If they're stuck with the work, then they have more power. So, Moses, to your question, deregulation is on the way, but it's not. Yeah, you're being. I love your cynicism. Isn't it funny how in Los Angeles, the Department of Water and Power controls you cannot even dig a well in this county legally. Used to be you couldn't even have a rain barrel. You were not allowed to collect the water in a rain barrel. Now that's slowly changing. DWP has begun to allow people to collect their own water in rain barrels, but you still can't dig that well. So Moses, you're right to be skeptical, but let's take our wins one at a time. All right, so investor water, just to wrap this up, it is a genuine breakthrough in the sense that now we have investors on one side, end users are getting what they need, and they'll pay a high rental fee, but they have the flexibility, and they always have the option to lease it or buy it out. We'll have that ready for them, so it's fair. In the middle is us making sure the technology is good, making sure that things are organized, and as we pull away and start letting other players in, other water companies, etc., we're going to do cool things like create syndicates of investors, just like those old oil and gas limited liability partnerships, LLPs. We're going to syndicate these investors so that maybe $1 million or a $5 million project could be done with a group of investors. So all that cool stuff will happen in this marketplace. And that's why I say it's a lot like Airbnb. It's a lot like Alibaba and so forth, Zillow, right? This is going to be the cool thing. And you're going to see the first steps first, we're doing the proof of concept. This weekend, we're shooting a video with social distancing in Phoenix of one of our machines being put to work in a first specialization. Next briefing will be devoted to that. I won't get into it in this conversation today, but on the 23rd will be another insider briefing, and we will go into this super cool first vertical, meaning like a specialized market that we're going into with an actual machine that we have, that we did something great to get it. I'll explain all about it. That is in market, being put to work, generating first revenues. We have to create a bank account for Investor Water, the whole thing. So it's very exciting. It's starting. And remember, we really appreciate your coming in, because you doing this Regulation A offering, going to OriginClear.com, clicking on a big red banner, jumping in and doing what you can. Remember, you can always come back later, is tremendously appreciated. And there's a 10% dividend, and then there's the opportunity at some point, if you wish, to convert to free trading stock at a discount. So it's a win-win. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate your being on board. I will end it off now. I love being in these meetings, and there's more and more good news despite all the tough times we're going through. Thank you for bearing up, and you're going to be able to communicate with me through Devin, invest at OriginClear.com, or call 323-939-6645. Speak to Ken Berenger at extension 201, or Devin at extension 116. Thank you all. Be safe, be well, and I wish you all the very best. Have a good weekend, and I'll see you next week on Thursday at 5 p.m. Good night.